Right. I hope everyone got this page. If you missed my previous sessions, so we have used both idle and collab, but from today onwards, I'll be totally switched to this collab environment. Right. So what you have to select is new notebook. Click on new notebook. By the way, if you have any questions, please use the chat, or maybe you can ask any doubts you might have. Right, now let me start with the from beginning, what this environment is. I told you, like, this is like a notebook, and this is extensively used in Python community to share their code, as well as, you can keep your notes with okay, let me check. Yes, thanks. You should get this. I hope everyone got this page. You go to collabresearch.google.com, then click new notebook. You should end up getting this. Right. So as I told you, if you go here, so normally you can type the code. There are two types of cells available. We have code cell, right? And you can have text cell. So this symbol, this is a run button, which will gives you idea like this is a code cell. So for example, last time we discussed number lists, and we had a couple of values, something like this. And then if you just say print number list, and if you run it, you will get the output. So the first time when it runs, it will take some time, but after that you will see it will improve the execution time. So the next one is the text cell. So let me use this, because then actually you can use, you can keep the notes with the same notebook, we call it, right? Now, for example, since I'm going to talk about lists, I can just say I'm going to work on lists. You will see this is the left-hand side, and the right-hand side display how it will display when we leave this the text cell. Now, for example, if you need to get the titles, or you can work on, there are some symbols we can use to to make the text with the formatting. Now, for example, if I use hash something like this, and you see the text will be larger. And then if you do it 2 hashes and 3 hashes and so on. So for example, the bigger heading, so you can put it like this, and then 2 hashes, then the second level heading. We will work on headings. Right, and then you can just type. Right. So I have time I will discuss how we could make use of this. And then there are a few things here that you can actually manipulate this one. For example, if you want to take this up, you can click this move cell up, and then it'll be like this. The beauty is if you can download this. Now if you go to file and you can download, right? And then you can download as a Python notebook or as a Python code, which is very useful later on. Right. And let me name the sheet as data structures in Python. Right. And I told you this will be stored in your Google Drive under notebooks, Colab notebooks. So there will be a separate folder created inside your Google Drive. Right now, for example, let me show that. So I have renamed this as data structures in Python. So go to Google Drive. So if you go to Google Drive, under the Google Drive, you will have Colab notebooks, and then you will see your file here. So this is the file I have just created today. So you will see which we call the notebook, IPython notebook, the term that we normally use for this. IPynb, that's IPynb, that's the extension that you normally see, right? Okay. If it is not clear, please use the chat session. Okay, good. So let's move on to today's topic. Let me open a new text window. The next thing that I'm going to discuss is tuples, right? So I will start with the second one. We will start with the tuples today. Similar to, so let me start saying tuple. So I created a code, so text cell. So name it as a tuple. Like in previous, tuples are similar to the lists, but then the representation will be slightly different. In lists, if you remember, we use square brackets, but here we are using rounded brackets, right? And you cannot manipulate once you created a tuple. Now list, you remember, we create a list and then you add new items to the list, you manipulate, you delete, right? But after you create the tuple, you cannot change anything. This is, you can think this as a read-only list, right? Okay, let me take an example. Right. For that, I will create a code window. Right. So I'm going to create, I'm putting some comments here, create tuple. So for creation, you can put a name like earlier. So I'm going to create a number tuple, meaning like a tuple, tuple to keep a set of numbers. So like this, but remember we use rounded brackets here. And then I put some set of numbers. Right. Okay. So if you print it, you will see the same thing. So if you just say print number tuple, right? And if you run it, you see the same way. Tuples are used, if you remember, when we use a print statement with the formatting, with modulo operator, when we have more than one value, we represent those values inside the tuple, if you remember that one. So you can go back and refer your notes. So, so places like that, we will use tuples. The idea there is you created this, once you create, you can't change this. So that's the idea. So the things that you can do is you can, okay, let me show the type as well. If you type, if you get the type of this, remember the type function we have used earlier to check the data type of, it says class tuple, which means Python takes this as a tuple. Right. So the other operations that you can perform, you can access items. So for example, if you want to access the first item, you can just say the name of the tuple. We can say number tuple. And then I can put whatever the element you want to access. Now, in this case, first element, Python is 0 index. So we put 0. And if you print this, we will get the first value, that is 11 here. Right. But if you're trying to add, there's no methods for adding, right? As I told you earlier, you cannot manipulate. So there are no methods for this. But you can take some methods are there. Now, for example, these are common for even for list as well. Like you can count, you can get an index, you can get the length. Remember the length? Length function we have used a couple of times. Now, for example, len, and if you say number tuple, it means we are requesting, okay, number of elements in the tuple. Right. So in this particular case, if you run it, it says 5. That means we have 5 items in the tuple. So there's no methods or functions for you to manipulate, add, or change. You cannot change. If you try this, you will get an error. Now, for example, you know that how to access element. Now, our first element is 11. So let's say number tuple, that is 0. If you try to make an assignment, you will get an error. Let's say I'm trying to change it to 100, and if you run it, yes, it says an error. So the tuple object does not support item assignment. So you see, so this will not support any additions, the changes, or even the individual item deletion. It's not possible. You can delete the whole tuple. That's possible. Okay, let me show you a couple of other methods which might be useful for you. Things like getting index. Now, for example, let me know, let's say I want to know where the 2 is. So we can say I'm going to use print function here, number tuple dot index. The index method takes whatever the value. So let's say I want to find out where 23 is. So then it will say the position as 2, index is 2, because this is 0, 1, 2, right? So it start with index 0. So index value gives you where the index of a particular value. If it is appeared more than once, then it will give you the first instance. So this will give you index of an element. Right. And you can count as well how many times the value appears. So let me change this. I'm going to change this. I will put 23 again, which means I have 2 times, right? The 23 appear 2 times in this tuple. So let me count this. Print. We can say number tuple dot count, and then you can say whatever the number you have to count. Let's say I want to know exactly how many times the 23 appears in the tuple, right? Number of times and elements in the tuple. right? So if I run this, so we are getting 2, which means 2 times. Let me change it to 11. 11 appears only 1 time, so we are getting 1 here, right? So these are the basic manipulations. And finally, if you want to remove, you can say del and the tuple name, right? So you can say delete, and then if you want to remove number tuple, right? So it will remove this. So that's how we work with tuples. Right. Any questions from this? If you are complete, please let me know in the chat so that I can move to the next topic. Okay, now 2 things we have discussed so far. In data structures, we discuss the lists and tuples. List, you can keep set of values under a single name. Like if you have learned the arrays in other programming language similar to arrays. But the idea is it's ordered collection and you can manipulate. Whereas tuples, yes, it's an ordered collection, but you cannot manipulate. We will call it. You cannot, once you define, you can change. So sometimes this is very important when we want to have a set of values, let's say your configurations, let's say your parameters, and then you don't want to change it. If you want to make it like nobody can change, then you can make it as a tuple, right? Okay, good. So let's move on to the next one then. So under this one, let me put a text. So this one, I'm going to talk about dictionaries. So this is similar to list, right? But in list, remember, it's index based, meaning like when you want to access elements, we start with saying 0, 1, 2, and so on. We use a number. Instead of that, the index will be some key, right? So when accessing elements in a dictionary, it uses a key instead of numbers. Now, previous 2 cases, we use indexes like 0, 1, 2 to access each individual elements. Now here we are going to use a key. So basically we have a key and value pairs, right? Right. So this is just to put as a note, like I just explained today, because this is very, very important for us when we go for more complex problems, right? So I've got a text window. So there is a delete button in case if you make a mistake. Let's say instead of a code, if you get a text, so there's a delete button here where you can press and you can delete that cell, right? Okay. So let me first tell you exactly how you are going to creating a dictionary. So let me first start with the creating, right? So you will, like in previous case, you start with a name for the dictionary. So I'm going to create a number dictionary. And remember, in this particular case, use curly brackets. So list, we have square brackets. The tuples, we had rounded brackets. And now we have curly brackets, right? Now, this particular case, we have to put two values. We have to have a key, which means that's the key we are going to access elements. And then you have a value, right? So the keys, you can use any value. I'm going to use a string value here. I'm going to say 1, right, instead of, and then let me put some value. So hopefully some of you already know Japanese. In Japanese, we call it ichi, right? Those who knows Japanese, I know definitely. Let me, please correct me if I'm making a mistake. Right. So that means now the value is ichi. Now, normally in a list environment, we can put it like this. For example, let me, for the demonstration, we can say number list. So it will be like ichi, right? Or we can put it like this. But the only problem is then you have to call it the index 0, right? When you want to access it. But here we put a key value, right? Likewise, let me put a couple of values, let's say 2. So remember the colon will separate the key and values. Me, and then 3. Right. Each key value pair, you use a command to separate it out. Like in earlier, you could have actually typed it one line. Now, for example, you could have typed this as, we copy paste in a single line like this. This is perfectly all right, but clarity, if you're comfortable with this, please go ahead, no issues. So the same thing, right? So this is how we put. If I put it as a list, it will be like this. You will have only values, right? But in dictionary, now when we have a list, remember we use numbers 0, 1, 2 to access element. Now we can make use of the keys, right? This side here, what we have is keys. And the other side we have values. So we have a set of keys and values. You can have any number, right? Now let me explain what we could use manipulations, right? So for example, printing, you can just say print. You can run and see the output. Yes, you will get this form. So we have key value pairs. And then again, if you want to print each individual values like in a list, you can do the same. I didn't discuss this with the tuple, but you could have done the same. And then you can check the type. If you say type, right, the type function will tell you that this is a dictionary. Right. Let me put more. Right. Now let's say you want to access each of these keys. So you can simply say, let's say you want to access the first item. So now you don't have to remember where exactly the value is. When you have 0, 1, 2, sometimes very difficult. When you have many values, very difficult to exactly select the item you want. But here you can use a key, right? You can say, for example, print, I'm going to use number dictionary. And then now I can use the value, the key value. Here we have 1, which will access the value in here. So that means Ichi. So hopefully we are getting Ichi as the output. So the accessing values is easier here because we are using a key for that. And it's very easy for you to access elements. Right? Let's look at printing. Now when you want to print, you can print in many ways. For example, print simple print. You can say print number dictionary, that's possible. But let's say you want to print only the keys. You can just say OI, you can use a for loop in number dict. And then you can say print I. There are a couple of questions I got. One question is, for the tuple, we use rounded brackets, as well as list, we are using square brackets. Yes. That's how Python will understand what kind of data structures you are using. So you have seen in a list, we use the square brackets. Tuples, we use the rounded brackets. And then for dictionaries, we are using curly brackets. The second question is about the deleting tuple. What kind of a situation we delete a tuple, like if you are introduce a new parameter? Yes. Now, for example, you want to manipulate, the only manipulation can do is you delete the tuple and you recreate it if you want to change it, because individually you cannot manipulate like in lists. Yes, so that's exactly what you have to do. So you will get familiarized, like when you see the examples. There's a question from Nasri regarding if you use indexes as a key. Yes, it's possible, Nasri. Now, earlier we don't have a choice. Depend on the order. I told you we will have ordered items in previous two cases. So that order will depend on how exactly you are going to put the values, right? And then depend on that, index will be created automatically. That means the first one is 0, second one is 1, and so on. But here you can have the option. Now, for example, the first one, you can say, okay, that's index 0. Second one, you can say the index is 2. You don't have to have the same order. So you have a flexibility here. Yes, you can still use numbers as the index. Right. There's a question like editing notes. Okay. Simply you just double click it. You double click, you can change the notes. Now, for example, if you want to create a list, I didn't, look at this earlier, but let's say list, you will get. So how do you put this? And the bullet list, for example, you use a star here. So you don't have to click, but when you put a star, for example, like this, item 1, right, item 2, so it will appear as a bullets. So it's automatically comes like this, and it's very interesting.
Mr. Sampath, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. This is regarding this. Actually, I couldn't make the last 2 classes, but I went through the whole videos and I learned. Thanks. Regarding now you are using this Colab environment from today. It's very convenient to continue. But for example, we need the internet, right? So
exactly,
if we are like doing without the internet, using the idle environment, using a new sheet, I noticed like when we enter multiple codes there, it automatically reruns from the beginning. Like everything is again rerun.
yeah.
So is it possible in that environment to run individual codes in the same sheet?
Naswi, so these are 2 different ways of writing scripts. In a Colab environment, you can run individual cells, and if you want, actually you can run from the very beginning. I didn't discuss this. Now, for example, there's a command called run all, which means it will run from all the cells from top to bottom. And this is exactly what we are going to do at the end. For example, we write some code for one data set, and if you want to run for another data set, you just change the data set, and then when you rerun, you will get the whole different set of results. But when it comes to the scripts, it's individual. Now for that you need to learn the little bit of programming. You can create modules, that means separate files. You can call them. So the way you use is slightly different.
Yeah.
So there's another version, this is I told you Jupyter notebooks, and there's an offline version you can actually use. And you can install in Python as well. It's possible. If you're interested, I will show you exactly.
Actually,
how
Mr. Sampath, my question was like in the idle environment, when you get a new notebook, new sheet, for example, if I add different codes, one below the other, and finally if I run the module, the answer to everything comes in the idle environment, right? My question is whether we can, like, for example, type 5 codes and maybe run only one there. Is it possible?
Then you can make it modular. So for example, if it is different functionally, you define set of the simple code set of codes as a several functions, and you call one function. You have to make it modular.
I noticed when you did the example, you created separate new sheets for each code, but I try to do it everything in the same sheet, but it runs everything. That's what I asked.
Yes, that's how it runs. Because when you put everything, it will run everything.
Yeah. So is it possible to run one by one there? Is it possible?
No, not possible, except you either put into separate functions and then you call them individually. So this is exactly what we are going to do, right? When you're writing functions.
Okay.
Each individual activity, you put it as a function, and then you can call whatever you want.
Okay. Thanks.
Right. Okay. So those who are interested, you don't need actually internet. You can just use, install Jupyter, and then you have this notebook environment separately. But the issues you might have now, today we are going to look at other libraries. So some of the libraries you have to install. So you have to learn a little bit how you can install, different libraries with the idle. Whereas in the Colab environment, everything is built in, meaning you can just call any library and then environment is set up so that you don't have to do it by yourself. Now, for example, hopefully we will start numerical Python today, NumPy, and then also the plotting, matplotlib. All these are, you can just say import, and then the environment is built in for you. So it's easier for you to, as a beginner, once you actually master, then you can actually switch to other things. But as a beginner, it's most easier is everything is set up like this environment. Right. Shall we move on then? Okay, then. Right. Now we were discussing how to display. So let me check, my net connection might be slow. So let me fix that for you. Give me a couple of minutes. Get Okay, so in this previous one, what we have seen is when you print using a for loop directly, you will get the list of keys. And then if you want to print the values, that means your right hand side. So you can say for I in, then you put a dot and then you say values. So this one will print the values only. Right. So let me know if you have finished up to this point. There was a question whether you can use numbers as keys. Yes, you can, and you don't need to use quotes. So the numbers are the same as the data types that we have discussed earlier. So you can just use a number. Like, let me quickly show you. Maybe I will get a code window. We can say dictionary. You can have curly brackets, so you can just use like this. Right. And then you can directly access it. So you can say, okay, print one. Hopefully this should work. Yes. I hope you got the answer. So remember, now normally it will start with 0. So in this particular case, we could have put anything. Right now, for example, instead of 1, then we can put 3. We can say that. Right. And then I could have print 3. The earlier the indexes are automatic. like whatever you put for list and tuples, it's automatically indexed as 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. In dictionary, we have the flexibility. You can define what key should be. Right. Okay, I will delete this. So I told you, like, you can delete the cell if you want, delete the cell. Right. Okay, we are here. Let me also discuss adding items. So I'm going to take a new code window, and then I will print first so that I remember what I have in the dictionary. Right. Now, let me add a new item. Right. So this time I'm going to add item. Now we have 3 items. The 1, 2, 3 in English, let's say this is a dictionary kind of, and then the value is exactly in Japanese. I put as ichi, and san. So let's say fourth one, I can say number D, and then I can put the key. So this is a fourth one, 4. And then I can make it as an assignment. Okay, so I can put as your. Right, let me print a key. Yes, now I have 4 items. Right. The next one, if you want to change the value, there's another, those who know Japanese, you have another a Japanese word for 4, right? So let me change it to that. So let me change the value, right? The item value actually. So let me say number dictionary. And the fourth one, I'm going to change it, right? As she. If you print again, you will see now this time, the fourth item, earlier it was yon. Now we have changed it to she. Final one, there are many other methods, but these are the basics ones. And I have given in the handout, I have given some methods, and you can go to help if you need to know more manipulations. Right. So let me also remove an item. Right. So we can say del. Let's say I want to delete the second item. So I can put the key. So this time I say it's 2. So when I run it, and then let me print again. If you finish, please let me know in the chat so that I can move to the next topic. So there's another one I'm going to skip, the sets. We need sets, but not very frequent as these 3. So I will focus on these 3 since I have to cover some more topics. But you can go through the notes and you can try. I hope that it won't affect because it is we have to follow the similar way. But only thing what you need to remember about the sets is you will have unique items. In mathematics, you learn about the sets. Now, if you want to keep a unique set of items, right? then you can use as sets. So basically in a set, it's an unordered collection of unique items. So you will have unique values, but in unordered, there's no order. If you try to print it, you will see multiple times, you will see there's no exact order like in tuples or lists, right? Okay. But if we come across this again in our future sessions, I will explain there, right? Having said that, I want to quickly talk about the strings, actually string manipulations. Right. So let me move on. I will take a text cell and basically I'm going to use string manipulation. This is easy because strings are, you can think it as a list of characters. Very simple idea, right? So string, you can think it as a set of a list of characters. We know the string made up of a set of characters. Now let me take a code window to explain this. So I'm going to use a string. I'm going to put dialog. Now this is a string, and if you print s, we know it will print dialog. And then if you take the type of this, this will be string value. Now, since this is a string, right? I told you this is a list of characters. So you can talk about individual characters by using the index, right? So let me briefly explain this. Now, here we have a couple of letters. We have, so this is the string. And if you look at the index values, we know that we can access each individual characters using the index. So the first character using 0, second one using 1, third one using 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Right? Yes, this is index. And then normally we will say this is a forward index. And remember that here we can have read the characters from the behind. We could this is forward, and the backward direction also you can specify the index, which means the first one will be -1, right? So you will have -1. So -1 is G actually. So if you come from the end of the string, so the index of G is -1, then O is -2, right? L is -3, A is -2, sorry, -4, and I is -5, and D is -6. So A is -4. This is -3. So this is backward indexing. because this is very, very important to understand when you're manipulating. So the data manipulation will be the same. Later on, we will see, right? Now let me show you a couple of things. Now, if you try, let's say, the first character, right? Printed the first one, I can print it as print S. We know that 0 will give the first character. If you print it, you will get D. Now, similarly, you can say S minus 6. Right? So the both indexes are the same. Likewise, you can try others as well. Let me print the same line. I can say minus, I can put S3, I put a comma, S minus 3 will get the same value. I forgot to put a bracket. So this one is the error, right? So we'll get L. Interesting, the last one, you can just say minus 1. So this is very important. Last item, remember this. Because you don't need to learn the length of the string. So you can say last item, you can say minus 1. So which will you will get G. So important ones, the first one will start with 0. The last one is minus 1. So you can go for forward index or backward index. That's what you need to remember. Okay. Now this is an interesting, we can use part of a string. So sometimes we need to manipulate the data, whatever the values we have these strings. So that manipulation you can easily do if you understand how strings are made out of, in this particular case, a set of characters. So I can keep substrings. This is called slicing. We call slice strings, we use the term, right? That I will discuss, but let me know whether you have finished up to this point. Are you comfortable up to this point? There's a question from Naswi. The name I have used. You can use any name, Naswi. Although I have used that number tuple and number dictionary like this. This is for my reference. Because this is to say that, okay, I define the number as a tuple and then numbers as dictionary. So that's why I put those two names.
Yeah, but the number is not a standard term, right?
Yeah.
We can use any name, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay,
you can use any name, but don't use tuple and dictionary as it is, because then it might confuse. So you have to be very careful. You know, I hope you know. Right. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, so let's move to the next one. I want to talk about the slicing. Let me take the code window key. So the slices means the substrings, right? Can you guess what will be the output of this? So I'm going to put 0 to 4. This is the convention we have earlier in for loops that we have used. Yes. So when you have two numbers, you specify start and stop, the similar way that we have discussed so far. So if you put 0 to 4, what do you expect as the output? Yes. The values we expect in a range function, remember, we will have 0, 1, 2, 3. That means first 4 characters, isn't it? So if I run this, we will get it as that. But if you start with 0, you don't have to specify. Python actually easier. Most of the time you don't have to type. If you start from the beginning, you can just say print. This is the alternative way of representing. So you just put colon and 4. The meaning here is you start from the beginning, go up to 4. 4 means not including 4. That means up to 3. That means 0, 1, 2, 3. So you will get the same answer. Any questions? Are we clear up to this point? Right. Please put the values in the chat. So if I type this print s 0 to 6, what will be the output? Any idea? Now, when you say 0 to 6, it goes from 0 to up to 6, right? That means 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So which means you get the whole string, isn't it? So I can say the shorter version like this. I told you the start and end. Normally, you don't have to specify. We can just put a colon. So you will see this in when we discuss more on the data manipulation, you will see this syntax. The idea there is everything, right? When you just use colon, so start to end, so you will get the same output. So the slicing, what you need to remember, the way we slice the string. Similarly, this is the same with the list as well. So you have start value, stop value. If you specify third one, then it's step. So that's the way we are going to define here. So similarly, a couple of more examples. If I say print s, I'll start with 3, goes up to 6 with the step of 2, what will happen? 3, you go up to 6 with the step of 2. So you start with 3, isn't it? You start with 3. So that means we start with 3 and the step is 2. So the next value is 5, is less than 6. Then the next you don't have because 7 is beyond this 6. So 3, 5. So the character 3. So this one and this is 5. So if I run this, you will get LG. So I told you, you don't have to specify start and end. So there's a shorter version for this. I can say print s starting value we have to specify. End you don't have to specify. You can just say 2 colon colon. Empty means you go up to the last one. So you will get the same answer here. Last one and very important one. If I put this one, what is the output? S. We will put -1, then -7, then -1. See what will happen? -1 is this one, G. Goes up to -7 with the step of -1. That means next one is -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, right? -7, it goes up to -7, not including -7, so 6. So that means we'll get the dialog. It has actually swapped the values, right? So shorter version for this is the start and this is the end, right? So when you specify start and I told you, you don't have to specify. So you can say colon colon and you can say -1. So these things actually I have given you in the handout with some more examples. So you can always have a look. So manipulation is very important because this is the same steps that we will look at when you're going to select a set of data. Now, for example, let's say you have a data set. You need only the first 20 columns. So you can use the slices. Or you need the first 50 rows. Again, you can use the slices. So slicing we will discuss when it comes to coming ones, but you will see the same thing we will discuss. Same notation we will use. Right. Last one, if you want to print each individual characters, you can just say this. Now for each individual character, you can just say S and you can say print character. You can use any. So it will go one string at a time, right? So it will print individual character. So the similar way that we have seen this in the list as well, similar syntax we have used. If you want to print all the item in a list, we can use the same way. Using a for loop, it's easier for you to print. Okay, so in the chat, please let me know whether you have finished. Right, there's a question like why we use these notations. This one, and also there's another one actually. So this one's, let me quickly discuss that. So there's a question why we have to use this, but this is sometimes used instead of just say, and you can manipulate the strings. So when you say, let me take a new code window. S. So this is to say 1 to 6. Yes, we could have used S as well, but when you are manipulation, you will see in the code. So that's why I have done it. Yes, instead of just this, you can just say yes. But there will be sometimes when you use variables with the slicing, you will end up getting this one as well. So there's another one that actually I have not discussed. So that means print. We can say S0 and 6, right? And you can see 1 if you want. Step you can specify. You'll get the same answer, right? So there's a shorter version. Sometimes you might see when you read codes, something like this. It's the same as the whole string, right? Either single colon or you have a double colon like this. Both will give you the whole string. If it is a tuple, it will be a whole tuple, or it will be a whole a list. Right. Okay, so that's all I want to discuss under data structures. There are some things I have missed, but hopefully you can cover using the handout I shared with you. Please let me know whether you have finished so that I can move to the next one.
Sampath, I have a question. Why this there is a 0 to 6, then the -1 to -7? What is the purpose actually? Like when you put like a -1 at the step, it's automatically going reverse, isn't it?
Yes, reverse direction. Now sometimes, let's say you want to access last 10 columns in your data set.
Okay.
This might be easy. So the negative numbers, reverse direction. So sometimes you have to reverse the data set.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you want to reverse, you can easily just say -1. So it will reverse the data set. So let's say you have a set of features from 1 to 100. And if you want to reverse the whole data set from 100 to 1, so you can easily done using this.
Okay. So the minus are coming only for whenever we want to reverse, huh?
Yes, it depends on what you want to do with your data.
Okay.
This is just to, look at some operations. So when you want to specifically set, set of rows and columns, so you can use this, the notations that we have discussed here.
Like, I would like to, you also tell, like, whenever you teach these things, is it possible, like, where this practically, we apply? Sometimes, we don't.
Yeah, that will come in the next session because we will be discussing a whole machine learning example. Starting from data, we will have.
I understand that. Like whenever, like you go with like these different items,
yeah.
If you give some kind of idea, like where we use this one,
okay.
Sometimes we think like, okay, where we are going to use this.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. I understand. Yeah.
Okay, Sampath.
Please let me know. When you need it, I will explain. So especially these manipulations are very, very important when it comes to manipulating different items. It might be data, it might be just a bunch of values you want to manipulate. We can make use of this. Say, let's say you have a data set and you want to plot only a part of the data set. You can select whatever the data that you want using these techniques that we will discuss here.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I want. Like,
okay. So, and also this is very commonly used in natural language processing. Now, for example, prefixes and suffixes, getting a word into root root form. Like we have, go, goes, there are some techniques where you can get the root word. Especially when you want to make sense of your textual data. So we have to manipulate strings. So we will use these techniques in a way to manipulate the string.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Right. Let me switch to new one because I'm going to start with the matrix manipulation. For that, I would like to start with the new notebook. So let me select file and let me go to new one, right? Sorry, I have gone back. So I'm going to create a new notebook. And the next one I would like to discuss the representation of vectors and matrices. I think I have just briefly discussed last time the lists we can use to represent matrices, right? Again, I will share with you the handout, and it has the complete description as well as the code you to try. But let me start, explaining the way to represent matrices. Now, one thing we have discussed is you can represent using the lists, right? So let me start with the code window. Sorry, text cell. So what I'm going to discuss here is matrix manipulations. And under this one, the first one I would like to discuss is Python lists versus numerical Python. We call Numpy arrays. Right. So in this part, actually, we will discuss a couple of ways you can use to create vectors, matrices, automatic generation of vectors, what function is available. With the Python package called Numpy, we call numerical Python. So if you just Google it Numpy, you will get a lot of resources. And then if you go to numpy.org, so whole documentation is there, and you can read on, learn. There are some codes are already available you to try out, especially for manipulating matrices. Especially this is commonly used in scientific computing. All the mathematical operations that you need, especially if you're going to work with this library is very, very important. Now, since we have already learned list, let me compare. Now, for example, the creating a list with a simple one, let me start with the simple list of numbers. Let me say test one with a set of numbers. So let me put 3 numbers as 1, 2, 3. So if you look at the type of this, let's say type, to know what this is and how Python, understand or represent is. So this, since we have used square brackets here, it represent as a list, right? If you want to represent as a Numpy array, first of all, we have to make use of this, right? I hope you remember use of the libraries. We use the import keyword, and I'm going to say I'm going to use Numpy, right? And then let's say I'm going to create another array. So when you want to create this, I have to use numpy.array method. So this is to say that you are going to make use of method available in numpy. So that's why we use numpy.array. And within that, we define a list, right? So what you get is different from what you get from the previous one. So you can check that again, type dot test, sorry, type test2. So this time you will get it as a numpy nd. Nd stands for n-dimensional array. Now, simple lists are okay if you have a smaller data set. You can just use the Python list environment. But when you are going to work with very large matrices and vectors, make sure you use NumPy arrays, right? They are more efficient. I'm not going to talk about this, but if you read the documentation, you will see there are a couple of examples as well. And you will also see when you're using a very large data set with the list and arrays, you will see NumPy arrays are more efficient than the Python list. So make sure that whenever you use a large data set, you can create it as a NumPy array. Right. Okay. So that's the first thing I want to discuss, the difference between the list and the NumPy arrays. One thing to discuss now, all the methods that you are going to use under NumPy, always you have to start with NumPy and dot, and then you have to specify the method. Now, to shorten this one, there's a question saying that whether you can open Excel file as a NumPy array. Yes, there are some methods that you can use for that.
Mr. Sampath,
Yeah.
sorry to ask this question, very basic one. What is the meaning of NumPy?
It's a numerical Python. It's a library called numerical Python.
Okay.
Yes. Right. This is called numerical Python. It's a name given for the library where you have a lot of functionality available for manipulating, matrices, vectors, and there are other things also you can do, like you can solve a set of equations. I will come to that point later. Right. So there are many things available. I will briefly show you like what is capable of, and then I will share my the notes with you so that you can spend some time on learning this. Right. So what we were discussing is use of NumPy. All the time when you use a method in NumPy, you have to say NumPy dot and you have to specify particular method. Now, to make it short, usually people rename this as with the as keyword, you can say NP. Now, what it means is we will make use of numerical Python and we rename this NP, which means in the code, we can use NP. So make a note of this one as well. The same thing, instead of NumPy, now I'm going to use a shorter one called NP. So when you read, Python code, this is very common. If you see a code written in numerical Python, it always, most of the time, it starts with import NumPy as NP. Right. Now let me quickly talk about, vectors and matrices. Let's start with the vectors first. Right. So let me start with vectors. So vectors, we can think it as a 1D array because we are going to use NumPy arrays. So it's one-dimensional arrays, which means if you are going to define a row vector, the first one you need to remember is you have to import the library NumPy as np. You can write the same code in idle, but remember you have to install numpy, which I will discuss later on, not now. For the time being, I recommend to use Colab environment. And then defining a row vector, easy. You just use whatever we have defined earlier is a row vector array. And within this, you will define as an array. So this is a row vector, right? So if you print A, the output looks like a list, but it's a numpy array, because if you say print type A, the output will be similar to the lists, but it will be a numpy array. Right. If you want to get the length of the vector, you can use shape. This is to say length, right? So it will give you a tuple. So I hope you know this notation now. It's a tuple with, you will say 4, right? You have 4. And if you want to say the number of elements, you can say print a dot size. This is to say, okay, to know number of elements inside the vector, right? So it says there are 4. And finally, accessing elements similar to list, you can say, if you want to access the first element, you can say a naught. This will access first element. We will get this. Any question on this? Right. Now let me go to the column vectors. But again, please finished. Right. All these details can be taken from the documentation. I told you the NumPy, if you go to documentation, you will get a detailed documentation, or you can look at some cheat sheets. So that's how exactly I normally try to learn things. There are interesting, cheat sheets are there. For example, data manipulations, what you could do, and so on. Right? So there are a lot of cheat sheets there. You can simply make use of these ones. But I will share some of them so that, this is the interesting one that I used to, learn things. So all the basics manipulations are there, right? The important ones are there, right? So I will share some of them with you, right? So let me quickly go to column vectors. So I think we have earlier also we have discussed this under the matrices. So matrix means a list of lists. So if you want to define a column vector, so for each row you can have a list. So we can have one element in the list because it's a column vector. So 2, 4, and 5 like this. So when you print, you will see that it's taken as a column vector. And if you use the shape and the size, print b dot shape, it says we have 4 rows and 1 column, which is the column vector. We get the dimensions. Okay, so I think we learned the basics. Let me quickly give you some functions available you to create, matrices. For example, if you want to create a matrix, let's say C with values containing numbers from 1 to 10, right? As a vector, we can use NP array range. I hope you remember the range function when we use for loops. A range will create an array. So when we say 1, 11, I hope you remember, right? It goes from values 1 to 10. So it will create a vector containing numbers from 1 to 10. Now, similarly, if you have to create an odd vector, you can use the same way. Let me put this is as D, right? I can put the step, the similar things that we have discussed earlier, start, stop, and a step, right? So this will create a odd vector containing values from 1 to 10. So if you are familiar with MATLAB also, we have a way of defining this. So similar fashion, we will have this functionality available in Python. Another way of creating a vector This one, let me say x np dot linear space. Linear space, this function is also available in MATLAB if you are familiar. But the idea there is you can specify start and end value, and this will create 50 elements. A vector of 50 elements, linearly spaced between 1 and 100. So if you say print x, you will see this will generate the values between 1 and 100. The first value is 1, the last value is 100, and there will be a 50 elements here. Now this is very useful. We will discuss this under the graphics. So let's say you want to print a sine curve from 0 to pi, and then let's say you want to come up with 50 elements. You can just say 0 to pi. If you need a so you can look at the size. You can say print x dot size, the number of elements. If you print it, it says you have 50 elements. Any questions from this? So what we have discussed so far is we create a row vector, column vector, and we also discussed two functions to create or automatically generate vectors. That means arrange method as well as linear space.
Sampath, can you tell what exactly this linear space is?
You will get a linear space vector, meaning when you say 1 and 100, when you say linear space 1 and 100, it will create 50 elements, linear space between 1 to 100. So spacing is equal space.
Okay, so it's always 50?
It's always 50, but if you want to change it, let's say I'm going to create another one.
Mr. Sampath, I also had the same question. How we know it is 50 or the number of elements?
No, default value is 50.
Okay,
Default is 50. Let's say I'm going to create 100 values. I'm going to create a vector in space. And then let's say I need 1 to 100, I need 100 elements, you put 100 as a third argument. And then this will give you exactly 100 elements between 1 to 100. So this is the mistake. I have to use NP. You got the point now? So what this means is this is a start value. That means the end value, and this is number of points you need. Very important. I will use this actually when we draw graphs. Let's say I'm going to draw sine function between 0 to pi. Let's say I need 100 points, I put 100. If I need like 200 points, I put 200. So let me put 200, then see what we will get. So this will create 200 points between 1 to 100. Yes, 200 points. So let me put it 100.
So it's not dividing that, the number, last number into 50 and put it. It's something.
No. Linear space means between two elements, you have the same difference, right?
But not necessarily the first element to the second element will be the same. Huh?
Yeah, and
I mean-
second to the third also same, third to fourth same, linearly spaced.
Sampath, if we put 0,
No,
other than 200 points, then will that be 0.5 spaces? Can you show that?
Which one, sir, you want?
Line space 0, 100, then 200. Then I want to see that it will be 0.5. Okay, because I was puzzled about this deviations from 0.5.
Okay. But it makes sure that you will get the equal spacing and the numbers will be exactly 200.
Yeah, but the thing is like, some decimal places, that's what I was wondering, like why it
Yeah,
didn't come with
exactly.
0.5.
Decimal places, that is the,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that part I will discuss later on. This is the idea. Now, you know that when it comes to computer, especially programming, when we represent something is floating point number, you can't represent some numbers as exactly as it is. So sometimes you expect the answer 0.5, but what we are getting is very close to 0.5, but not 5. Let me give you an example now. Let's say I'm going to divide 10 by 3. What do you expect?
3.333 something.
It should be something like that. But actually you are getting something like this. Now to understand this, you need to understand how data is represented inside the computer. So that part actually I have not covered.
Just to clarify some part,
Yeah, I understand.
How do you get 0.5 spaces by changing the numbers in the previous code? Now I ask you to put 0, 100, 200.
Yeah,
So
because it's
if you put by putting what numbers you can get 0.5 spaces.
you will get 1, right?
Now again, not 0.5, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. Now, this happens because in our computers, in data representation, not exactly you are getting what you expect. So you have to round it off. So when you round it off, you will get 1.5, right?
This is tricky, right?
No, I mean, this is the same thing if you do something in MATLAB as well.
Yeah, I think, sir, 0 is like if I want like exactly like a 0.5, we have to start with 0. But the way
No.
That's why I asked you to put 0.
No, this is
No.
199 divided by something, isn't it? Because 1 to 200 means there is only 199 points.
I understand.
Not 200. No,
I mean,
sir, I'm asking sir's question because he wants 0.5 now exactly.
If you put 201.
No, so then usually what we will get is you round it off means when you make it to 2 decimal places, right?
Sir, when you make it 201, it automatically exactly comes as 0.5115. Sampath, can you try? Sampath?
Yeah, okay.
0, 100, 201.
0, huh?
0. First one 0.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was telling. Like it is between those 2 points. I mean, not considering those.
That's what I was looking for actually.
Okay.
What possible numbers to be?
Okay. Now I got the point. Okay. Now, what I want to tell you is whatever the number you define it here will define that one. If you want to exactly get this, yes, I didn't get that.
Okay, now we can think the meaning of 200, 201.
Yeah.
Now,
so I think easiest way is 0 to 10, and then you have to put 11 here, right? So that's exactly what we were discussing.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, yes.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, I think the time is up. I have a small quiz before we finish. So let me stop at this point, and then I will, share the note so that you can go through and come. So the next time I'm not going to go into very detail like this, where I can actually show you like more important ones, because next time I'm going to show you how things, what we use exactly in machine learning. For example, I want to do some example or advanced one to show you like where we have used whatever we have discussed here. So let me finish the session for today, and I will have a 5-minute quiz. We have 10:55. So can you please go to kahoot.it. So if you go to kahoot.it, you should get go to www.kahoot.it. Hopefully you can use a mobile device. If you want to see the questions will shown in your screen in the Zoom, and then you have to answer using, I hope you are familiar by now. Okay, let me run this. We have about like 8 questions. Okay, so today's quiz, the game pin is 1531723. So you put this game pin and put a nickname. I think now we can start. Okay, so I think we'll stop for today, and I will share my slides with you. And next week, I'm going to complete this one, meaning like complete the matrix part, and then we'll go to math plotting part. So please spend some time on learning the material I will send this week, so that I can quickly finish off the next session, right? Before the semester starts, I want to finish this. So please spend some time on that. So having said that, thank you everyone. We'll meet in next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.